Good afternoon, everybody. I was waiting for the big gong outside to tell everybody to come in and attend the sessions, but we haven't had that yet. But we're a couple minutes behind schedule, or not. So we'll see. And the faster we get this done, the faster we have happy hour. So we're going to get started. I am still Seth Miller. For those of you who are here this morning for the plenary sessions, thank you for sticking around. For those of you who weren't, we had a good time and you missed an amazing session. You did, actually. It was really good. But one of the things we talked a little bit, or mostly this morning about... Oop, there I am. I'm coming and going. Cool. Stuff. I'll just be loud. We talked a lot about physical stuff and the process of making the passenger experience happen and what the future of travel is going to look like in that context. And this session is demystifying the digital realities, or something roughly approximating that. Yes. I also have to apologize. I am not the actual moderator for today's session. I got roped into this last minute, so if I get something wrong, please forgive me. But we're going to try. So we're moving from the physical more towards the digital and experiential stuff. That does have some overlap into physical, obviously. So we are going to get into physical stuff as well, but we're going to start with the digital concepts. And to do that, I even updated my name on the screen. That's pretty cool. Was not expecting that. To get us started, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Joe Rowan, who is the Associate Director for Strategy and Customer Experience at Preston Good, who has been in this industry for long enough that I'm not allowed to say any of the numbers, and she's gonna, I think, I don't know. She's gonna bring us through a bit of an introduction to some thoughts about where we are going in the digital world and some talking points to get started with, and then we're gonna have three other folks join us on stage and spend some good time going through how that all matters. So, Joe, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much.
I think.
So, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to this session. I'm going to just start off by sharing our design perspective on creating new journey narratives, very much looking at how we can blend the physical experiences with augmented and virtual realities. And I think mixed reality really opens up so many opportunities in how we create seamless and connected experiences. So we're going to explore how some of these emerging technologies could really shape some of our future travel experiences, attempting to demystify some of the digital realities. So for those of you not familiar with Preston Good, we've been around for over 30 years. We're known for our innovation across transport, hospitality and consumer products. We work extensively across the transport industry and brands across the world, but alongside that we produce a number of self-initiated concepts which are very much about anticipating today what people are going to want tomorrow. So today we're going to be considering the next generation of technology, the next generation of passengers, and a storyboard of what some of these potential next generation experiences could look like. So starting off just by understanding how digital is changing and the opportunities that this really kind of unlocks for the next generation of kind of products across the travel industry. So just for context, the internet has evolved from being text-based, so emails, messages, usernames, to being media-based with photos, videos and live streams. And the next evolution, Web 3.0, is an immersive and 3D version of the internet. It's incorporating concepts such as decentralization, blockchain technologies, token-based economies, and of course, AR, VR, and the metaverse. So in considering the possibilities and the applications, whilst the focus is often very much on the passenger experience, Web 3.0 and the kind of utilization of some of these blended realities also has huge scope to optimize processes and systems for other stakeholders, ultimately enabling that better passenger experience. And this session comes at a time where, we're hearing a real mixed response to the metaverse, a mix of excitement and possibilities versus kind of anxieties and apprehension, with Disney, for example, closing their metaverse department. But for us as designers, we're very much embracing it. And here's why. It's a really powerful tool for effective collaboration, both internally but also across the supply chain. We're using virtual reality for both client engagement and for user testing, very much focused on how we can get it right first time. We're seeing it in use by airlines from a kind of training and remote maintenance perspective. For sales and marketing, it really offers that kind of extended toolkit. And for our passengers, the scope is obviously endless, but of course optional. Seamless and connected experiences in blended realities might seem distant to some of our passengers today, but they're especially important when we're considering our next generation of passengers. So let's meet Gen Alpha. Born in 2010, so the same year that Apple released the iPad, and they'll be turning 18 in just 5 years' time, which obviously, as a timescale across the aviation industry, isn't very far away. So it's a generation that's really been born into a world of artificial intelligence, of augmented reality, and they've been, pretty much communicating with machines since their first words. So it's been said, albeit a little bit dramatically, that if businesses aren't prepared, it's a generation that will walk by without noticing them. So we think it's really important to be kind of considering their expectations and their kind of characteristics when shaping some of these future travel experiences. So they're said to be conscious and aware, which means when travelling, they will really be sort of seeking ways to reduce and minimise their carbon footprint. Open-minded and accepting, they'll really be caring about social issues and inclusivity. So in terms of design, a really inclusive approach will be expected, and the integration of gender-neutral branding and inclusive language will also be super important. And growing up with advanced technology as digital natives, their worlds have been very much kind of dominated by smartphones, tablets and other electronic devices, and virtual playgrounds like Fortnite and gaming, other kind of gaming platforms are already their 3D social network. So we can assume this kind of expectation to really engage in a kind of gamification of experiences. They're also anticipated to be the most demanding audience yet. A generation really expecting speed, responsiveness and customisation. And I think having witnessed firsthand through the pandemic how change can happen overnight, they're not going to be afraid to challenge the conventional. So joining together future tech and future users, we look at how they might experience a future journey. We've suggested 2030, but let's come back to that. So what we're going to do now is just look through several different viewpoints, so at different passengers using different devices with differing kind of timeframes of readiness of some of the technology to really kind of visualise how some of these digital realities might kind of extend beyond the journey that we recognise today. And it's about kind of exploring what might be possible to create experiences that are kind of eco-conscious, more accessible, more frictionless and more enhanced. So the possibilities of these new experiences begin in the virtual world. So from the kind of first engagement with a brand when planning and booking, instead of clicking on the web page as we know it today, will we be entering a kind of 3D brand world or brand showroom, a space that really kind of captures that brand essence and all of the services packaged into a kind of really engaging and immersive experience, which will, enable us to explore destinations, book flights, preview cabins, lounges, and explore some of the other services. Perhaps we'll be greeted by the brand avatar in a kind of new way for passengers to really kind of engage with the brand. We've called her Ava, an advanced virtual assistant or sort of digital concierge, with a real kind of opportunity to kind of fully embody the brand from look and feel to tone of voice, and something that can really support that end-to-end experience, whether it's kind of sharing tips, alerts, and right through to wayfinding, for example. So amenities within this virtual showroom could include kind of exploring destinations and will be very much linked to our own digital passenger avatars, which I think are going to be very much kind of key to these frictionless and equitable travel experiences. And the kind of all the biometric ID, preferences, all the relevant personal data, loyalty points, tickets, etc., will all be stored in this one place. So tailored and individualised travel suggestions are just going to be at the touch of a button. There'll, of course, be a 360 preview zone, so we can explore cabins, whether we want to preview economy, business, first-class travel experiences across any different aircraft types or moments of service. with the opportunity to select seats, but also respond to prompts to upgrade as well. And I think this kind of functionality is really especially important when we're considering passengers with anxiety or hidden disabilities, for example, where we can take some of the unknowns out of the journey. And the same for the lounge, perhaps also an opportunity to showcase some of the kind of new features such as VR zones and a chance to pre-book them as well. And with food pre-order, more important than ever from a kind of sustainability perspective, passengers could also be invited to select their onboard meals in the dining zone. And we just look at how far we could kind of push a really kind of engaging system to visualize the menu before ordering and gaining points for doing so, really pushing the boundaries of kind of loyalty schemes as well. Entertainment's also an interesting opportunity, applications spanning from kind of virtual concerts to movie services, which go beyond that kind of gate-to-gate entertainment that we see today, perhaps instead for the duration of the trip. And I think what's really interesting when we start to talk about some of these concepts is, yes, they could be useful in that kind of planning and preparation phase of a journey, but they could also, almost form the basis for a virtual lounge, a really exciting opportunity for economy class passengers, for example, to enjoy the service within the airport as well. But back now to the real world and our experience in the airport. So as we make our way to the lounge, will this perhaps be supported with AR wayfinding, which could, for example, be tailored to specific needs, such as communicating step-free routes, for example, or just the kind of ease of locating in the first place. So we're going to visualize some of these elements through some of the different kind of passenger mindsets. So looking first through Cleo's eyes, and with enough points for an upgrade, she's welcomed to the lounge. Her Face ID's linked to her ticket. She's recognised, greeted by her name. She's connected to her flight data, which is displaying the status relaxed because it knows how long it's going to take her to board as well. And a digitally enhanced welcome area, potentially featuring kind of immersive screens, could create a kind of landscape for both that kind of unique experience, that sense of excitement, but also to really kind of push the boundaries of loyalty schemes with the integration of revenue-generating opportunities, for example, last-minute upgrades. And exploring now some of the kind of AR opportunities. Looking through Leonie's eyes, this is our luxury passenger. She's utilising the AR on her phone and is experiencing some of the next-gen amenities, the virtual kind of pop-up stores that are interspersed throughout the lounge. And so there's an opportunity here to be able to curate some kind of personalised offers based on previous purchases, destinations, etc., and to be able to view these different brands and potentially even have them ordered directly to the destination. Will we also start to see virtual reality zones in our lounges? Again, from Leonie's point of view, as a premium member, she's got her seat reserved in the VR zone, a real welcome opportunity to escape some of the chaos or potentially to connect to her social network. But opting for the kind of comforting and cocoon-like pods, which could, of course, be kind of completely immersive and multi-sensory, provide that sense of escapism and calm through a kind of meditative spa-type experience. And there's obviously scope for the kind of augmented wayfinding to be supported with haptic communication, so letting the passengers know when it's time to board, something that could also offer huge benefits throughout the whole experience, actually, for those with kind of hearing or visual impairments. And thinking now of Rose and Romeo, who are our elderly couples, from that kind of accessibility and mobility perspective, this advancement of technology could really help to empower a whole kind of group of passengers who may be avoiding flying altogether or certainly doing it with challenges as well. We've got kind of data that says 10% of the population actually struggle with walking quarter of a mile. So this is Geo, which we've developed as part of a consortium. It's a personal electric autonomous vehicle. It's integrated with kind of precision wayfinding, tracking and navigation software, which means that it can meet users when they arrive at the airport. It can then get them to the right place at the right time and return to charge when it's finished. And it's demonstrated here just in the airport environment. It's self-balancing, it's designed with walking etiquette and a very small footprint, but it's very much about kind of empowering passengers with reduced mobility to experience a journey the same as all. And the technology knows sort of where passengers are. It calculates how long it's going to take them to get to the gate, so it gets passengers exactly where they need to be at any given time. An expansion of this system, robotic deliveries, is also a service that we may expect to see more of, whether it's for kind of speed or convenience, or it's just about kind of minimising that need to walk and carry items. People will have the ability to be able to kind of order food, beverages, or products from anywhere within the airport from the comfort of their seat and have them delivered directly to them. So within minutes, the order appears, hopefully incorporating reusable and returnable packaging systems too. And I think, what's really exciting about this technology is that alongside some of the kind of brand showroom ideas, it really opens up huge opportunities for economy class passengers by being able to offer this kind of virtual lounge of food, beverage, entertainment, retail from anywhere within the airport. And moving on now to the cabin itself. So in considering some of the kind of possibilities for augmented reality communications, it also really opens up opportunities for a new aesthetic. The cabin, the seats, all becoming a kind of a canvas for new effects, much more about how we can support that kind of digital play. And I think it's very influential in starting to think about, where our brand statements and features might sit and how we can kind of minimise some of those, split material breaks and split lines for very kind of seamless surfaces and canvases. So guided by augmented direction straight to the seat, we've shown a number of kind of gamification elements that are kind of popping up along the route. So we've got a kind of digital avatar bouncing on the seat. We've shown some of the kind of rewards of green loyalty that perhaps are rewarding passengers in new systems for ordering their food first or for packing light, for example. And some of these verbal and visual cues could also be very much available through a mobile device, providing kind of an overlay, helping passengers to learn about their seat and familiarise themselves with the kind of features and functionalities. So whether this is kind of helpful touches, like suggesting where there's stowage or actually just indicating which stowages are in use to avoid passengers leaving things behind. So moving on to kind of the idea of nesting and getting comfortable in the seat, we focused on business class, but imagine if you could also kind of upgrade virtually, so flying virtually in business class while sitting in economy, for example. So we've received our personalised kind of welcome message, but there's also a lot of opportunities to integrate kind of specific functions or kind of curated messages, such as kind of reassurance for cleanliness, or could be anything like sort of the direction of prayer by indicating with an arrow and things, for example, too. But I think this kind of ability to uniquely customise spaces is super interesting. What we've sort of just shown here is the idea of kind of augmented gesture control, responding to sensors within a seat that maybe are kind of monitoring body temperature and enabling that to be kind of reduced or increased as required. So, a huge amount of functionality there as well. And virtual reality has been rejected in the past on board for various different reasons, but could augmented reality actually offer the best of both? So on a simplistic level, could it actually start to replace the onboard monitors, potentially a huge weight saving? which we've suggested here. So alongside kind of opportunities for emotional well-being, such as sort of predefined digital environments that could really enable passengers to curate their space, to really kind of fit their mood or their activity. And we've shown it on a kind of sliding scale of immersion. So, offering some control to passengers, whether it's a kind of floating interface or something that you're, got a kind of full 360 immersion to. Perhaps we could also kind of provide an opportunity to customize experiences, so collaborating with designers or brands and potentially integrating some ancillary revenue opportunities as well. But finally, will this technology also be really valuable in how that onboard service is delivered? So looking now through the kind of the cruise lens, and how we could kind of help to curate and optimize their service, ultimately about improving that customer experience, but also kind of building in operational efficiencies too. For example, kind of presenting key information about passengers as required, whether this is kind of dietary information, connecting flights, or simply sort of do not disturb messages, for example. So in terms of elevated experience, we've looked through the eyes of some of our passengers, and we see Web 3.0 as a super powerful tool in being able to create future journey narratives with really kind of far-reaching benefits. And at Preston & Good, some of the big issues that we're really striving to address through design can just be kind of categorised as greener, smarter, better and healthier. So by way of summary, what we've done is just overlay some of the benefits that we think this technology really unlocks. So from a kind of greener perspective, this future technology could really inspire lighter weight products, for example, by removing the monitors. It could extend the lifespan of products by using a lot more of kind of virtual branding, for example. Potentially could be really beneficial in creating products that could be better recycled. Perhaps this kind of idea of a canvas unlocks a new aesthetic that is much more about using monomaterials and things that can be better processed. And obviously, we talked a little bit about the idea of influencing greener behaviours by incentivising some of these passengers through kind of digital cues. From a smarter point of view, we touched on the kind of potential use cases to kind of optimise systems and processes throughout the kind of product development and the service side of things. But I think this extended toolkit also really has a lot of opportunities to expand revenue generating opportunities through kind of retail and loyalty, etc. too. Better, these digital realities open up kind of significant opportunities for passengers from an accessibility point of view. We showed the kind of idea of the autonomous concepts, haptic communications, supporting those with visual or audio impairments, considering too neurodiversity, so really being able to support experiences for all with the ability to kind of preview and take some of that element of surprise out, whilst also integrating efficiency and thoughtful touches throughout, looking at how we can really design out some of those pain points. And lastly, healthier, these seamless surfaces acting as a canvas with, less split lines, less dirt traps, using gesture control, extremely beneficial from a hygiene perspective. And obviously, we've talked a little bit about how we could integrate some of that emotional well-being too. So in terms of creating this kind of new journey narrative, we think that Web 3.0 can really enable greener, smarter, better and healthier journeys. And, having sort of been able to demonstrate some of these benefits that are more than just a gimmick, we really feel like this technology is going to support us and to move in the right direction. So, our job as designers is really about what's the best application of these technologies so that we can make genuine differences and improvements. And, the objective about thinking of all of these possibilities now and thinking kind of broadly and longer term about the future is so that we can be kind of that step ahead, so that we can support future digital experiences, but also be able to future-proof some of the physical solutions, taking some of the risk out of innovation. But it's obviously new territory for us all, so it's going to be really important how we best collaborate. And do come and talk to us if you think that there's ideas here that are resonating. But it's going to be great now to move into the panel discussion and hear a little bit about what the reactions are and what some of the guys have got to say.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am going to try to use a microphone. Have a seat. Thank you. And I'm now also going to invite up the rest of our panelists onto the stage and get started with the conversation. Very brief introductions, which is to say mostly just their names. Olivier Genchu? Yes. Is the creative and technical director at Neutral Digital, which is an augmented reality and XR sort of firm. Catherine Doyle is the associate director of product development for Collins Aerospace. And Craig Smith, who is the director of product for Overair, as an eVTOL company. So y'all got microphones there. And sort of going to start this off, and I'm not going to stand behind you because that's terrible. I'm just going to sit out here instead. We're going to start this off, sort of bringing each of you into the conversation, sort of one at a time here. But Catherine, I want to start with you. You've got a history at the airline. You've since gone to the dark side, gone to the bright side. I'm not sure which way that transition happened.
Term gamekeeper we prefer.
Okay.
As Brits.
Where in the industry do you see any of this sort of evolution happening first?
Gosh, good question. I would say, actually, I'm kind of quite conflicted in my own mind because I came from a full service carrier and did 15 years there. So like many of you in the room, I'm sure you have had many a battle in terms of securing capital to move your products and services forward. So what Joe's just shown us is incredibly inspiring. But I do wonder, actually, whether maybe an early adopter could be more of one of the younger, more dynamic, smaller, potentially even the lower cost carriers who don't have any of those constraints around them and actually would use this to differentiate and keep innovating and separating themselves from others in the marketplace. I think everyone will eventually get there. And Joe mentioned the word, actually, which I think is key, is collaboration. A lot of that stuff actually is going to require the airports and their infrastructures to change and their suppliers and some of the ground handlers, etc. It won't just be the airlines and their passengers. But yeah, I do wonder actually that the first people to jump, I think, could be those guys who don't have the legacy constraints around them. And then once someone goes, I think the rest of us will follow.
Okay. Craig, we're talking about a new type of experience in the sort of augmented reality and the Web3 and the digital stuff. eVTOL is also a very new, very different type of experience, or at least that's what we're being promised. Sort of looks like a helicopter to me, so I'm not sure. But how do you see that, and how does some of this digital transformation that's ongoing sort of in parallel / the background affect where you see your side of the industry going?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So for the eVTOL perspective, it's really a new mode of transportation that ourselves and the industry is trying to make more available to other folks to get across major metroplexes in a reasonable amount of time. And with that, we kind of have the ability to really think holistically about what the cabin is and what the experience is without any preset industry expectations. And when we think through the experience, we're really trying to understand, what is this new mode going to want? It's a little bit like an Uber. It's a little bit like a train or a metro, and it's a little bit like existing aviation, and then it's going to have its own tendencies. And so when we're thinking about how does technology integrate with that new type of experience that's somewhat similar and somewhat related to these others, how is it going to be different? And one of the areas, I'll name an example that it's going to be a little bit different, is it's a lot of times on airlines, for example, you're trying to help entertain the passenger while they're sitting in a seat for 5 hours. In our case, our average flight's going to be more like 20 minutes, and you're really getting to see your environment from a very new perspective. At 1,500 feet, you're really fully immersed in kind of the area that you might drive in or live in or see on a day-to-day. And so for us, it's really trying to think through how can we make the flight part of the experience itself. How can we bring technology in to help pinpoint and show people waypoints and interesting things that they're flying past. And of course, we have to have a very seamless experience too, that going from the helicopter analogy to how do we make this more available to a wider audience of people, the operations have to be extraordinarily efficient, and it has to be as easy as booking an Uber and having this be an option in your mode choice.
And no middle seat then, right?
No middle seat, yeah. That's definitely a requirement.
Okay, I want you on record on that.
Yep. Everyone gets a window seat. Everyone gets an aisle seat. And
Fair enough. Olivia, as the company who's going to be tasked with actually, making this stuff all happen, realistically, where are we on the timeline in terms of delivering some of these developments that Joe has highlighted?
Yeah, tough one. I was asked a similar question by a client actually a long time ago. But they were looking at the question they asked was is this doable in 5-10 years? I wasn't so optimistic. But I'm saying this because I'm coming from a generation that in 80s, 90s, I was sold flying cars in the years 2000 on magazine covers, and obviously that didn't happen. But it brought me into the industry. But anyway, long story short, I think on a software level, we're able to innovate very fast and to adapt and to change very fast. On a hardware level, I think we're a bit slower because there's the human is more involved. There's a lot of testing happening there. But Joe mentioned a very good thing in the presentation, which I really enjoyed. You highlighted the generation. And I think it is a generational thing. So if it would be to put out a year, for sure it's not going to be in 10 years. But I think for sure in the 20 years, this is more likely to happen. But I also believe that instead of looking at it as, okay, here is a number of years, let's all wait until that year comes to us or so, it's an iterative process. I think it's going to happen. A version of it will be done in 5 years, another version in another 10 years, and I think we're going to go in those chunks, basically.
I mean, the iterative sort of development of these things, I think we could agree that at least from the crew training, onboarding types of stuff, Emirates just made a big announcement that they're basically doing it, right? Maybe they're onboarding it, but they're very close. That's not 5 to 10 years away, right? We're seeing it in maintenance operations, sort of, crawling through the belly of an airplane. You can swing your hands apart and you get the exploded view of the blueprints and you can figure out where that widget that you're trying to replace really is. So some of it is there. Is it just a matter of taking that same technology and making it more flexible and more powerful to handle, sort of real world as opposed to specific use case?
It's reliability, I guess.
Okay.
It's the fact that that thing's going to run solidly and the user engagement is going to be already familiar to a point. I mean, I've seen in the airport actually yesterday, more elderly lady which was trying to interact with the price tags, which obviously they were not interactable. But the idea of touching on, swiping on everything becomes very easily to engage. And you're right, things are happening. We released at Neutral in a collaboration with Qatar Airways, the first digital flight attendant. So a lot of these things are happening already. But until these will become mainstream and we can address them as it's a full picture, reliable, and fully interconnected between the sections, the digital lounges, the booking, the cabin view, all those kind of things. It's going to take a bit of time.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't stay and wait.
I'm not leaving the industry, so am I going to be 90 sitting here asking you the same question? I guess is my concern. But we talked earlier this morning about scenes in the journey, those sort of bumps along the way as you move between modes of transit, as and there's scenes within a flight, the meal service versus the sleep time and things like that, all those little bumps along the way. How much does digital take that away, and are we fully enveloping ourselves so it just doesn't exist anymore, or are we smoothing those seams with a different sort of experience? How is that going to evolve? And that's all of you. Go.
I could pick up on that a bit to start to just continue talking. But I think that evolution will happen first from the cabins or the airlines' involvement with kind of developing the cabins further. Because the cabin at the moment is a bit, somebody mentioned today, you're strapped in the front of a screen, right? Now, to get the privacy levels to access biometrics, it's almost there. You can opt in and opt out from your phone to your watch to whatever, so you could do the same to the cabin. But it's only as much as you can enhance in those bumps, right? Yes, biometric will help for sure. That's, I think, the first thing. The second thing would be the content. The IFE screen is used for movies at the moment. but there's no learning, there's no health kind of programs at the moment involved in that. And that shouldn't be just an IFE app. I think that should be more involved in your personal device. Now, if that personal device is going to be a headset of a shape or another, AR, VR, mixed reality, whatever's going to happen, for sure will benefit. But I think, unfortunately, I don't see any actions taken in that direction, right? And that's what worries me more, basically.
I think also, a lot of what we're doing is we're looking for where we can, resolve pain points, where we can, identify that there's a challenge or there's, a behaviour shift that's needed. So actually, when we're talking about whether that's, pre-booking your meals and bringing customers on that journey, by being able to kind of support that with a new system is actually a kind of really inspiring way to look at some of those seams, those pain points, by bringing a new solution, a new way of looking at a challenge, and making it relevant. So I think it's got to be driven by benefits and about resolving issues rather than it being something that is a nice to have.
Back to the sort of timing and the evolution of this a little bit, because I want results. You mentioned Gen Alpha. So born in 2010, they're about to turn 18 at the end of this decade, which roughly puts them as the main group of travelers probably end of the following decade, right? If something like that, if history holds relatively accurate there. And this is the aerospace, airline, commercial aviation industry. So is it already too late?
Maybe we just need to move quicker.
But seriously, are we developing a solution, developing a solution for the next or two generations down the line makes sense? Are we time limited in that development in a way, or does there have to be a bridge to get there that doesn't push the existing customers? If I got on a plane and had to put on a headset to figure out how to buckle my seatbelt or to change the channel on the IFE screen, I would be pretty upset. I actually like to be able to push a button and my seat reclines, as opposed to, I guess, doing that. Maybe if my seat went down, I could get into the dancing and to make my seat recline, maybe. But how much of it is understanding where the passengers actually are versus developing the concept, and are we leading them or following?
I think that's a really good point, because it's always good to have an eye on the future, to know what's coming, but also we need to be mindful of all of the generations of passengers that are flying. So a lot of these kind of concepts are in a way optional, but I think we've talked from a kind of accessibility point of view. The idea that if you do have somebody that has got kind of visual or hearing impairments, that actually if they can be communicated to and reassured, etc., that actually why wouldn't we embrace that technology, even if it does feel like a bit of a leap for different generations? So I do think it's back to that. If it's adding value, then it will be adopted. Yeah. But obviously being mindful not to alienate, a generation of people. I think one thing that has kind of changed a bit through the pandemic, not exclusively, but, we would always shy away from the elderly generation using technology, for example, but the pandemic has meant that, a lot more of that demographic are comfortably using a smartphone. I'm not saying by all means all, very mindful that it's still mixed, but it's moving in that, in that direction. So it's about being prepared for the future, not about taking away all of the buttons and saying this is how it's going to work now. So you don't work at Tesla.
Yeah, I can
Please.
pick up on that as well from a product development point of view. Some of the themes that we've talked about today, and they've come out across the day as well, so particularly accessibility is something which we're really championing now at Collins and trying to embed that in our product development process. But to your point, not alienating people before they're ready to kind of go with that tech. And I recently ran a project and reached out to some of our colleagues at Collins and found a phenomenal lady called Andy who is profoundly deaf, and she actually travels with cochlear implants. I learned a huge amount from her and had no understanding until she said that, you know, when she takes them out and she's asleep in a flatbed on an aircraft, there could literally be a major emergency going on around her, and she's entirely reliant on the crew waking her up. And that's just petrifying to me, to think that we allow people to travel like that. And I just find it incredibly disrespectful. So we're taking inspiration at Collins from our own people as well now, and really learning from them. But equally, I have, you know, a 4-year-old little boy and an 80-year-old mother. And whenever they need to fly, we've got to tailor to their needs as well. So I think for me, with all this new digital tech, it's about flexibility. And it's flexible to meet the demands of those people as we transition through the next sort of 10, 20 years. And it begins to become that kind of Gen Alpha norm.
And on the plus side, no concern about galley noise if she gets stuck in the bulkhead seat. To your point about older passengers and being able to adopt technology, I want to share a tiny anecdote. For Alaska Airlines is getting rid of the check-in kiosks in their airport lobbies. They're switching to bag check only. You can't print a boarding pass, and you can go to the counter, but you can't print a boarding pass. That's happening very soon. They're in the process of rolling it out. And Charu Jain, who is their VP of Innovation, C-suite, I'm getting her title wrong, but she's in charge of that and basically everything else in that sort of vertical, mentioned in a presentation 2 weeks ago in Dublin at Future Travel Experience that, you know, everyone's concerned, oh, well, they're not going to show up with, the older people aren't going to show up with a boarding pass pre-printed because they're not comfortable with it on their phone or this or that. And she's like, no, actually, they're really good at it because we send them an email and they read it. Everybody else just deletes them, but they actually still read their emails, so it actually works for us. So there's that.
Maybe just a quick one on the time of the on the topic of the timeline. And so again, because I think there's a certain stigma sometimes to an exaggerated digitalization, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, a button is still going to be a button, and I think there are UX designers out there, and their goal, and interaction designers, and their goal is to study what is the right balance between what is virtual and fully digital and customizable, and what is still to be a button. Right? Your iPhone still has, or my iPhone still has, like a silent switch physical button. There's a reason for that. But yeah.
And also, I guess we're not saying do all of this stuff tomorrow. What we're saying is these are some applications, things that we maybe are seeing in the automotive industry, for example, that could work. And it's a case of, you know, what resonates with different airlines might, you know, be totally different because they have different, you know, kind of passenger kind of key groups. So yeah, I think it's thinking of it as possibilities and opportunities rather than, you know, a one size fits all, and you know, it all needs to be completely digital and immersive.
Yeah. Question? Okay, we do have to go.
I'll just start with a quick story, and then I'll ask the question. But so I drive a Tesla, and I wasn't driving in self-driving mode, and I got a ticket. And I had my insurance digitally on my phone, which I was able to show the officer, but I couldn't figure out how to open the glove compartment. And I had to say, Tesla, open the glove compartment because of my voice. So with the advent of ChatGPT and the neural, you know, processing and all that kind of stuff, where the interface is now voice, have you considered that much in your designs and how things, because, you know, a lot of this stuff is going to go away just with first principle design, getting hammered home by, you know, all those tech gurus and, you know, a lot of the stuff we don't need in the first place, check-in kiosks. But yeah, we'd love to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, I think what's quite interesting is that, you know, we've talked for many years about passengers being able to use their own device to, you know, operate, for example, you know, kind of IFE or even, you know, as this kind of seat control on board. And what's interesting there is that everybody kind of sort of works with their phone differently. You know, some people use a lot of voice commands, some people, you know, have whatever it is, the big text and lots of different things, which already gives that kind of personalization, that familiarity, and actually, you know, that being almost the kind of gateway, I think is also a kind of, you know, really interesting, because we're not necessarily sort of suggesting that you've got to sort of learn complete new ways to communicate with a you know, a cabin that you're on for, you know, a maximum of sort of, you know, 12 hours or so. We're saying that, you know, how can we almost utilize some of the technology that exists that people are kind of using in different ways, and actually just kind of embed that as part of the system.
Yeah, for us, we're a bit more pragmatic with it. As new technology adopters, we got our hands straight in it and figure out how to play with it. So the thing that excited us the most is that the entire emergence of ChatGPT and machine learning technologies is you can scrap any idea of operating system. You will have your own personal assistant, let's say, which will take care of from the glove box to your ticket to your flight was cancelled. You might just have to say, I just need another one ASAP, and you will get one probably booked already in the next 5 minutes. So the only considerant there is like to what extent you're gonna allow privacy. But this is why the notion of avatars, and I think this is why the entire Web3 layer kind of comes as a, let's say, digital twin of yourself, which you can say what you want to make public in any digital form or not. And that's going to all be taken care of further. If I don't want to share it, I'm 70x kilos, I'm going to say I'm 80s, therefore I'm going to get a bigger seat or whatever. But that's your personalized, persona.
My name is Sergio Gomez from Dries & Catering Equipment. So I have a question that is basically two questions. So I'm trying to figure out the spectrum. So on the one hand, let's imagine that in the future, indeed, these digital realities become standard. So I wonder, how do you see the future of physical equipment to be? So what I'm thinking of is, in the past, to make a coffee on board, you have to click a couple of buttons and move to a couple of things. Then you move into screens, but now inspired by your conversation. So will this become standard for all equipment if these hypothetical digital realities become true? And then on the other spectrum, I always think, and there's something we say to ourselves sometimes in the coffee corners in the office, it's like, okay, just go to your kitchen. What do you have in your kitchen right now? Because what you have now at home, you probably will have it on board in 30 years from now. But I don't see, at least in my personal opinion, that augmented reality or digital realities are becoming mainstream for the normal person in our day-to-day business. So I wonder, why do you think that's the case?
So, I can answer the first one. We've seen concepts now on board rail where they are using kind of virtual interfaces. So, from that kind of point of view, I think, that is definitely something that is kind of viable and perhaps not that far away. I think in terms of, I suppose, the kind of the viability of some of the things that we've talked about. It's interesting when you do look to kind of automotive. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the the work that BMW have done with D there, which is kind of it's all about that kind of digital emotional experience. So it's something that we're seeing kind of explored in the industry and kind of related industries. And I think as the technology, does become something that, we see more kind of mainstream. I mean, one of the, pieces that we were doing with the kind of the Geo, with the autonomous kind of wheelchair, is actually that we've kind of seen all of this augmented reality navigation mapped and working and being able to take people on a completely step-free route around an airport. And, you might think that feels far away, but actually if you're somebody looking for a step-free route around an airport, it's something that actually becomes very relevant, and it does exist today. So, it might not seem necessary if you don't have a kind of specific requirement for it, but I think that's, it's back to sort of, some of the things that we touched on at the beginning. It's about benefits, and it's about solving problems.
I can maybe pick on the second one, because you're right, nobody here wears a VR headset at the moment. And probably in 5-10 years, neither. I don't want to walk strapped with something on my face. But we have a very strong digital presence and footprint, which you cannot interact through. If I want to think it behind my brain and send messages, I still have to pull out a phone and text them one by one, right? Now, if Neuralink is going to be the answer to that, I don't know. But it is a matter of which is the right hardware to be able to interact with this digital layer and then to get all this assistance and kind of this in and out with it, right? So probably not a full VR headset, but I'm certain that in 10 years at least, probably 6, 7, 10% of the people in here will have a form of augmented glasses in one or another one.
When Apple bring out the AR glasses, will we all be wearing them?
Exactly. We'll find out tonight, yeah.
Building on that accessibility conversation a little bit, and also I appreciate having the conversation about business class because there's space and there's more opportunity to do things there, but I'm a man on a budget. I spend a lot of time in the back half of an airplane. I wish I didn't, but and the window seat is my entertainment. So I'm sitting there looking out the window and watching my movie and on my phone. But how do we bring this concept to that 80% of the passengers? How do we get them into an eVTOL where there's going to be challenges in terms of demand and capacity and all of those things, and it's going to be priced out pretty quickly? How do we design the cabin products to be able to support that? How do we do it?
Yeah, we spend a tremendous amount of time thinking through all elements of accessibility. If it's price points, if it's mobility restrictions, if it's visual or audio difficulties. Somewhere around 13% of the population has a pretty notable hearing or visual deficit. So it's a huge problem that affects more people than we really think about. And when it comes to price points, we don't want to develop an eVTOL aircraft that just serves the 1%. So we do significant amounts of analysis to really understand what those price points have to be for someone to use this aircraft at least a few times a year. And some of the other things that we're doing too, without going into too many technical details, our aircraft is very efficient. We have 5 passengers. That efficiency helps us afford more payload for 5 passengers. So for equivalent cost, we're able to carry more passengers than other eVTOL aircraft can. And so that's basically buying the cost down for all the passengers on board. And with mobility restrictions, it's a very confined space, and creating more cabin space comes at a huge penalty. So we're really thinking about the entire system that the aircraft functions in, and ground support equipment and methodologies to make sure that we can enable access and loading for people that, from everything from having an arm brace on, a leg cast, being in a wheelchair, sight problems, older, may lack upper body strength. So we really have to make sure that the ergonomics for the aircraft and how we support the aircraft from a ground planning methodology really enables everyone to use this product.
Catherine, how are we going to build all those seating? How are we going to build all those monuments? How are we going to make the seats work?
Well, I think one of the things which we're really trying to focus on is, my toddler's given me a cold. I mean, the timing here. Last year it was COVID at the conference. This year it's a cold at the conference. Yeah, you stay.
Just a cold?
Yeah, I promise. I promise. So I think for us, it's going to be a really interesting kind of juxtaposition between the word that Joe used, the canvas. How much do the seats become a canvas, then with an Ollie digital layer over the top, which then means, back to my point about flexibility, if you don't want to use that kind of reality, you've got the buttons where they've always been, and it's a familiar experience versus someone who's a Gen Z or an Alpha coming through, and they can experience it differently. I think picking up on the accessibility point, the bit that really excites me about PG's presentation is the idea of being able to experience most of your journey from the comfort of your home before you fly. I think that would just be a game changer in terms of removing all of that stresses. I mean, imagine being able to walk through the cabin from the comfort of your kitchen and understand the relationship, to your point of your seat to the monument. So you can actively pick and choose, and you already know how that's going to look and feel before you board the aircraft, and how your check-in might go, whether there's a special assistance lane, where your gate's going to be. Again, someone who's got elderly parents who use the PRM support, they wouldn't have to be as wound up and as stressed before they go. It's almost like they shouldn't bother going. They get so stressed about that experience. If we could just take all of that away from them before they go, I think that could be an absolute game changer. So from our point of view, we need to think about how we develop our products to facilitate that and be a real enabler. And what's quite exciting is we are now starting to look at that ourselves as a company as well. So we aren't just necessarily doing the hard product, we're thinking about some of the digital tech and then working with our other suppliers and how that would all integrate to give that seamless and frictionless experience. So yeah, it's exciting times, but it's definitely making us sort of rub our heads and scratch our tummies a bit in terms of what does this start to look like. And how do we change how we work and how we think and how we develop our products so that we are sort of seamlessly fitting all of this together.
You have to do that hopping on one foot also. This is Aero.
Yeah, bring it, of course, absolutely fine, particularly after happy hour.
Hi, my name is Dieudonné from Momentum. Just a small question and a bit of testimonial also about what is existing currently in terms of virtual reality possibility out of the market today. But the main question will be why is there any initiative currently going on to offer the passenger that kind of seamless digital experience where you could have the wireless technology stream on the main Collins screen, for example, and a VR headset enjoying 3D movies at the same time for another type of passengers, etc., or something promoting AR promoting something on board the same airplane. So is that something which is very far away so far, or we can expect something cool like this? Just my very slowly. I know Neutral Digital had a nice VR experience at London Heathrow Airport with British Airways. A stream over Skylights headset. This was really one of the coolest experience with a business class seat. Film 360 degree and display on that virtual reality full HD screen. It's really transformed people flying economy to the US, most of them, and they were able to really actually see it, the experience of the live flight, etc. And it's really helped to transform a business opportunity for airline. It could be something else, but just a bit of info here over there.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning about the BA project. But the content is there. The content is there, the technology is there. We were lucky to be able to iterate on VR content for I don't even know how long actually already, but it's more than 10 years. The hardware is the part that I feel struggling with. When I say struggling, I mean in terms of user friendliness. There is makeup, which becomes a problem. There is hygiene, which always the headset becomes a problem. It's almost like we didn't find the right TV for the movies. The movies are there. The question is, who's going to find the right hardware or the right form of it that will allow us to, carry it in my bag or do whatever. I mean, the HoloLens and the Magic Leap, if you're familiar with AR headsets, become more friendlier. It's something that you don't strap to your face. You rest on your head like a hat. Becomes much friendlier to engage with. And that's where my hopes are going high. But the content is there. It's there and was there for years already. Right? So it's just a matter of becoming friendly in terms of hardware.
I think it's interesting, though, when you pick up on the kind of hygiene perspective, because, there are obviously ways of making it work, because in, the premium classes, we've got noise-cancelling headphones that are, kind of used between, consecutive flights, and the systems to make that work. So, I think the kind of provision of AR lenses is one thing. I think, imagining that we're not that far off people having their own is also another.
Yeah, I think a lot of the other questions really around how fast do you think this can come into the industry? And from an eVTOL perspective, we're really thinking around how can we build our applications and our software that goes with the aircraft and helps operators operate the aircraft. How does it support personal devices, and how do we get that information to personal devices? because like Joe was saying, that's really the best way to help with accessibility, because people have their devices set up in a way for their language, the way that they best consume that information. And if you support personal devices, it's really at the speed of new personal devices coming to market and your ability to develop compelling application content for it. And so, while AR may not be mainstream right now, it's certainly, when embedded systems are at a point where it's more comfortable as a wearable, which it's really not terribly far away, and we start seeing more AR products come to market, then if you have good applications, I'm sure that the folks making AR systems are going to want to make really easy APIs and platforms to make content for it.
Hi. Thanks so much for a beautiful presentation, Joe, and such an interesting discussion. If this is the future of travel, I'm really looking forward to it. So a question to you all. What is the one thing that you are looking forward to as an industry, kind of a person who's delivering it or a passenger who's going to experience it? Thank you.
I think one of the things that we've talked about for so long in the studio is, do we need monitors on board? We're really striving for lightweight products all the time. We're looking for, how we can make cabins greener. There's only so much you can take out of a seat, and that's the one thing that's sort of still there, that maybe this actually opens up opportunities to kind of push those boundaries a bit more. So for me, the kind of entertainment side is really interesting. I think, having heard from some of the things we said earlier about the kind of the accessibility, obviously that's also super key as well.
Don't really have an answer to that, but I'll try my best. The reason I'm saying that is because along the team, we often feel like not having the right channel almost to voice what we're doing, because sometimes you think so far ahead in terms of technology and the creative applications of that, and you don't really have, let's say, we do have very supportive clients, so I don't want to pinpoint, but you feel that overall there is some sort of people are playing it too safe, let's put it that way. And you almost feel like gutted a bit into just bursting all that content out, right? What Joe showed, it can be applied in the next 6 months, right? If you have the right client. Some airlines, you were mentioning earlier about, which was interesting, about potentially a new airline which doesn't have the legacy, might adopt it. We're happy to have one of the big airlines as a client, which are very early adopters to all this, and they have the legacy. So we hope that them setting up an example will just ease out everybody and make everybody be more brave in terms of adopting them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think more bravery needs, and I hope that going back to the timeline issue, if they'll wait too much, the generation are going to be disappointed, because people will want, the new generations will expect that. It's a given.
I think I would probably echo Joe's point about the monitors, but from a slightly different angle as well, in terms of just removing that hic issue from a certification point of view would be just huge for us. And business class is becoming more and more commoditized, and there's so many things that we could do for our customers, but those screens constrain that. Particularly in some of the further down the aircraft. So that would be quite liberating in some respects for everybody involved. But I think for me also, just to become a service enabler. If the seat is becoming commoditized, then how do we provide the airlines with a differentiation? And we know a lot of that comes back to service and cabin crew. So to see some of the digital layers enabling that, especially as we said throughout the cabin classes, I think is somewhere again where people could really own that space, and maybe your guys aren't exactly going to go and do that, and just really start to push the boundaries in that area. So I think for me, it's the service element alongside what the hard product delivers.
I think one of the things that I'm personally most excited about the eVTOL industry in general is current travel behavior is we see travel time greater than 30 minutes as a true inconvenience, and we rarely plan for that, or it's relatively occasional when we do plan to travel for more than 30 minutes. And so having the ability to essentially 15x the amount of places you could go within 30 minutes at a convenient service that's available through an app in minutes, I think that's going to really be a new experience to folks. For the people here who might be private pilot or flown in small aircraft, experiencing 15-minute to 30-minute flight where you could get somewhere notable in a day and get back within a couple hours versus dedicating an entire day to do it. I think that's going to be eye-opening for folks.
Okay, one more question out here.
Hi, my name is Preston from Events Aviation. Well, I used to work with catering with catering in my previous life. No, catering, sorry. It was a long day, I'm a bit tired. Just a quick one. More than a question, it's a reflection. I mean, because the technology you're showing, Joe, in the customer journey is not. It looks like sci-fi in aviation, but it's been around for so long. I mean, nowadays you get Mercedes-Benz sat nav, which is projecting augmented reality on the screen. Is like everyday stuff. The same thing with VR for schools. I mean, kids are learning. They're transporting themselves to the Coliseum when they're 7 years old, and I was learning with a black and white photograph in a book in my days. So
showing your age, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the grades don't lie. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think that that augmented reality, it's something that connected to sustainability will be absolutely amazing. Because imagine the amount of real estate we could free up in a seat. We're not going to be transporting heavyweight and large real estate in terms of 19, 20 inch screen, whatever is the new trend. Energy consumption and the power of the aircraft, and at the end of the day, there's a new generation that it's actually being taught at school with this technology, and that's the expectations they have. I think the challenge for us is, like you were saying, maybe just get a brave enough airline that doesn't have this kind of hierarchical history of the brand, and is so large that do not move fast to take decisions, but also as well the challenge is the UX. How friendly that is made to cater for all layers of different ages and people. Because COVID, I think, taught us something very, very. It was a hard lesson to learn. There was a lot of innovations that were not sexy to be sold before COVID. No one talked about air quality before, and we all know that every aircraft was coming with a HEPA filtering, but it was not sexy to sell seats, let's say. But nowadays, everyone is talking about, our air quality is great. So, well, it's the same as everyone else's because you're buying the same airplane, by the way. So, but the point being is, less physical components, less cleaning, less maintenance, less weight, less acquisition outright, and then, with this augmented reality or virtual reality, you have the option to upgrade your experience with new software. And there's not, the obsolescence of the product is not so harsh as it is with the actual physical product. So let's face it, we all do good seats nowadays. Well, I don't manufacture ones, but basically ergonomically wise, they're all okay. I mean, what makes that extra difference is that additional layer of information, how you can tailor the experience. So I think that from my point of view, it will be great that we can see that in the next few years. So we need a bit of investment in a brave customer.
That's great to hear, actually. So it's definitely about being brave, I think.
And that brings us to the end of our session. I've got a bunch more questions here that we're not going to get to, like, are we generating revenue or are we making passengers happier? How are you going to, what is this virtual upgrade that you're talking about that I'm going to be stuck in economy class and suddenly think I'm in business? Hang on, I got more.
More legroom.
Yeah, that's not going to happen virtually. Legroom does not happen virtually. Y'all should have been here a few years ago for the Boeing versus Airbus conversation on that. It was amazing. Seat width, they got into it. Anyway, we're done. Thank you all so very much. Thank you to our panelists for a wonderful conversation.